Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Amplify Your Impact, Personal Branding for Nonprofit Success with philanthropist, small business owner, model, and actress Taylor Huey. We're thrilled to have you join us for this engaging and insightful session. So my name is Haley Rogers. I'm the founder and executive director of the Women's Nonprofit Network. We are so excited to be hosting our second webinar. The first one was absolutely incredible, and I definitely recommend watching the recording. In the comments, feel free to share webinar topics you would like us to host in the future, but I'll now hand it over to my colleague Sylvia to give a brief introduction about herself and introduce today's session.
Thank you so much, Haley. Hi, everyone. I'm Sylvia Conifer. I'm a board member of WNN, pretty proud board member here. I'm also the executive director of Black Donors Save Lives, a nonprofit organization that aims to raise awareness about racial disparities across donation products. And I'm really excited about today's conversation with Taylor. As we all know, in today's competitive landscape, a strong personal brand is more than just a professional asset. It's a powerful tool to advance your nonprofit mission. And this webinar today is designed to equip you with strategies and techniques that you need to build and leverage your personal brand. And ultimately, this is to enhance your organization's visibility, credibility, and overall impact. So I would love to introduce Taylor. At the age of 17, Taylor founded BeaYOUtiful Foundation, a Canadian charity that provides confidence and mental wellness programs for female and non-binary youth aged 8 to 14 across Canada. And to date, the charity has reached over 4,000 girls to date with their confidence program, and that's just incredible, Taylor. And in today's session, Taylor will share practical tips with proven strategies to help you craft a compelling personal brand that resonates with your audience and amplifies your nonprofit's reach. So Taylor, we're going to send it over to you right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the BeaYOUtiful Foundation and your journey to founding such a wonderful charity organization?
Thank you. Thank you both for having me on this. I'm so thrilled and I'm very honored that you reached out to me. As mentioned, I run the BeaYOUtiful Foundation. So we provide everything from confidence, self-esteem, media literacy, goal setting, mental wellness classes, which I started when I was 17 years old. So something that was not supposed to become my career. It was really started as a passion project. I 1000% could have used this as a child. Having this type of safe space was just not something that I was exposed to at school. I was so fortunate to have a supportive family and that kind of, core friend group that really helped me work through some of the struggles I dealt with. But I was cyberbullied when I was in grade 8. I had multiple friends suffer with different mental health struggles, and it became very obvious to me that there wasn't enough resources and a space for young women to connect and feel valued and feel seen and heard. And so that's where the concept of BeaYOUtiful came from. I piloted my first program at 17. I had what I call my awakening moment. I felt so fortunate that I worked with 12 girls over 6 weeks through this program that I had created, and my life changed. I felt a shift in their perspectives of their own body image, and it kind of propelled me to be like, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And female empowerment, but youth empowerment specifically, really hits home for me. And to now say that I run a Canadian charity and we've got over 500 volunteers nationally in Canada is a dream come true, but it's been a long haul. And this is my 11th year now running the BeaYOUtiful organization, but we just got charity status about 4 years ago now. So to me, yes, thank you. It's been a really great achievement, and that's what's really allowed me to now do this full time. But for many years, BeaYOUtiful was truly a self-funded passion project. But I have so much gratitude for where it is now.
That's so amazing. I do have a follow-up question. Depending on who's watching, someone here might be also starting their own passion project. And obviously to take it to the next level, you have to put yourself out there. So do you remember what your first thoughts were in terms of like putting yourself out there? Like, what was the mindset that you had in terms of saying like, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to share it publicly? What was that kind of like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to dive right probably into our whole topic on branding. But, for me, and everyone's journey is different, but if you're starting, anything, whether that be a not-for-profit or a for-profit business, or you're wanting to, start your own campaign to raise money for something, the passion has to be there. And so for what I always stay true to is, what is that inner voice telling you? What do you want to share with the world? And how can you tell that through storytelling? So for me, that was my biggest push. I knew I could have used this as an 8-year-old girl. And so I used that 8-year-old voice of like, what would Taylor have needed back then? And how can she now ask for it now? So it was just finding and working on my inner confidence, truly, to be able to speak up in rooms where I knew that this program had value because it was healing my own inner child. And so I think I just really allowed that story to come through in pitch meetings and in sponsorship calls and presenting to school districts. It was really a voice of authenticity.
Yeah, I love that. I think storytelling is so crucial, and like connecting your own story to the experience. And I think it's just really impressive that age 17 you had that level of confidence. I know if I was
Mind blowing.
it is. I was like, no, I was very, very introverted. I didn't want anyone to talk to me. If my 17-year-old self knew I'd be hosting a webinar right now, absolutely not. I'd fall into a shell.
Oh my
Oh, that's
God.
so amazing to see though, that own self-transformation. I mean, I was always that kid that was, everyone's like, stop talking, Taylor. Like, my brother, yeah, we always laugh because my brother was like the opposite of me, but he was the gentle and the silent leader. Everyone called him, actually, which I loved. I think there's so much respectability in being a silent leader as well. And it wasn't that he didn't, have anything to say. It was that he was able to lead, specifically his hockey team, in a really amazing way where he didn't have to always be talking. He didn't always have to be the one coming up with, the first action plan. And I think I learned a lot from him, without getting emotional actually, but I learned a lot through his own experience of how he communicated with people. And I learned, how to also take a step back as a leader. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. There's a true benefit to allowing everyone else around you to shine, and you just uplift. And I think he really taught me that. So yeah, it's been a cool experience. But I learned as a leader to not talk so much, is what I'm saying.
No, that is so amazing, Taylor. And there was something you said about that inner voice. I want to ask this question. How did that inner voice guide you to defining your personal brand is? And why do you think personal branding is important? Like, let's talk all about it.
So, personal branding is an interesting term for me because I think a lot of people associate that with, you're talking about yourself. It's personal. It's you're putting yourself on a platform and allowing people to engage with that. I think for BeaYOUtiful, I have to be honest, it came from a very organic standpoint because I was the founder and I was quite young. I had to use my voice as the only means to really sell and promote this free program. So it was, my inner voice was everything at that point. And it still honestly largely is, tuning into the why. So my inner voice was constantly talking to the why, like, don't forget why you're doing this. When funding falls through, what's the why? When people tell you no, what's the why? And the why to me is equivalent to my inner voice. It's constantly reminding me to be grounded, to stay humble, but also the whole purpose of why I'm doing this is to uplift the next generation. I think the benefit that my inner child gets, in full circle is really great, but that was never the reason. It was because I knew that things could be different for an 8-year-old. It didn't have to be the way that I felt at 8. If I would have had those tools to build that confidence. And then how that inner voice, relates to branding. For me, it was self-branding because it was this program that I created that I was really trying to push. But I think what has stayed true to what I would say where branding is now, it's still a very honest, authentic conversation. That's kind of the branding that we've stuck with. We tell the stories of our mentors. We tell the stories of our young girls. I'm not putting together random quotes. I'm using testimonials. I'm using lived experiences with, of course, permission, but I'm sharing that as my marketing tool, as opposed to just coming up with a blog post that has no relevancy to what I'm actually talking about or who I'm teaching. Why would I not talk to a mentor who's literally in the programs daily to talk about her experience, what she needed as a child, loop that back into the conversation? So for me, personal branding has become community branding. but I stand strong and true to that, at least for the way that we run an organization. But I think that trickles into a lot of other companies who could benefit from having that same mindset.
Yeah, the marketer in me is like, yes, yes, yes. I think a lot of the times people overlook storytelling in terms of advancing their nonprofit and like communicating the impact. There's so many stories to leverage in your communities, and I think I resonate with that strongly in terms of just managing, for example, Women's Nonprofit Network. We always try to do member spotlights, show off what our board members are up to, really be transparent about the journey that we're on. And I think that that's something that everyone here who's watching can benefit from, whether it be promoting your community, but also sharing about what you're doing. Something that I thought of related to branding, I think sometimes as women, sometimes we have that inner voice that tells us to be humble, to be modest, to not be loud and bold. And I think before I started the Women's Nonprofit Network, I always was afraid to share about what I was doing on LinkedIn in particular. But last week, I saw a post from a really great influencer on Instagram named Courtland Johnson. I'm going to link her in the notes, but she made a really good post, and she said self-promotion is necessary for a fruitful career. If you don't promote yourself, no one else will. It's your job to make them notice. And I feel like that just hit home for me. And I think that personal branding, you can be so authentic, like you mentioned with it. You can be honest about your journey, but you have to put yourself out there. And so what? At the end of the day, if someone gets annoyed by your LinkedIn post or whatever it is you're communicating, whether it be like even selling yourself in a sponsorship meeting, doesn't have to be just digital. I think having that confidence to just let go of what the naysayers are going to say and just putting yourself out there. I think you're going to get so much more out of that than just staying silent, feeling like you can't be loud and bold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's like a social, like kind of, energy around that. Like, oh, she's self-promoting, or she's so full of herself. And that is like the blurry line of confidence. And I think that's too, like we as women and as young girls, like get confused of how outwardly should we share our voices and our opinions, and how confident should we, because we don't want to seem too boisterous, we don't want to seem too egotistic. But like, who made up those lines? And at the end of the day, I always say, if you're coming at everything with kindness and an openness, then absolutely, like putting yourself out there and being proud of what you've done, and having a voice and having an opinion, that is so important, and that should never be confused with having a big ego. If you're fighting for things you believe in and talking about what you're passionate about, like you said, the naysayers of people that aren't going to serve you in that room probably aren't meant to be in that circle anyways. There will be people who support you and cheer you on. And that's what I've really learned as well through branding. It's people who know your intentions and see the why, again, see that inner voice coming out. They'll champion you, and they'll be the ones that help elevate you, and you'll do the same, because that's the way community works. So
Taylor, that's such an amazing point you just made, and it kind of like led me to think of this. Like, did you ever deal with like imposter syndrome while creating your personal brand and putting yourself out there? Was there a point in time where you felt, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, I'm not worthy to be doing this? And maybe there's someone watching today who's like in that process of like trying to deal with imposter syndrome, to put themselves out there, to promote their nonprofit and their personal brand. What would you say to that person?
Oh my gosh, what I say to myself every morning. I 100%, like, let's not beat around the bush here. Like, imposter syndrome or doubt, your inner critic, whatever you want to call it, from whatever angle shows up that day, it is so relevant in my life from a day-to-day basis. And I also think social media does not help that. I think when we're bombarded and surrounded by the ability to compare, I did a whole theory on the social comparison theory for my final university thesis when I had to do it. And it was because I felt like I could connect it to what I was building with Beautiful, which is we innately as humans have this constant bombardment of, like, from social media, of we have to be better, look better, be smarter, grow our career, rise up. And at what point, is it okay to be like, no, I'm good, or I feel settled with where I am? And so that's a voice that I'm like really working on myself. I think in terms of imposter syndrome and just really like second guessing your value, that's something that again, I relate to confidence, but you always have to work on is really giving yourself that self-talk, that self-affirmation that you deserve to be here, you deserve to take up space, and you don't need to have it all together. It's like the key of life that I've really tuned into is even if the email's not written perfectly, but it's close enough, or this campaign is like, I didn't have the budget for it to be exactly what I wanted, but the purpose is there and I put my heart into it. Why not share that with the world? And if you can do that in like daily steps, even as you show up, like you said, you're afraid to promote yourself on LinkedIn, like you'll never know unless you try. And so what I think my first LinkedIn post got 0 likes because I didn't even know I was supposed to connect with people. I didn't know how to follow people, but I was like, I gotta start somewhere, and I'm only gonna learn through trial and error. And I think if your goal is to not be so hyper focused on the amount of likes and comments you get, but the impact. And sometimes that impact comes back a year later. Sometimes it's that one woman that you met. It's like, oh, you made this post or you spoke at this one event, and like it totally resonated with me, or I felt like I needed to hear that in that time of my life. Like there's the impact coming back 365 days later. And so I think as society, we're so quick to look for like efficient, affirmations, and not even affirmations, sorry, but like quick responses and quick success. And for me, especially with branding, you gotta play the long-term game. You gotta know that your branding is you, and you shouldn't give up just because, after 6 months, you're not seeing the feedback or the response that you want. And also, how are you measuring those success points, right? Is it only data driven based on comments, likes, reshares? Or can you look at it in a less, numerical way? Is it how people come back and tell you how they felt, how you've made a new connection or a new friend because of that one time you put yourself out there? So it's just removing barriers that you need to have it all together, because no one does. And as soon as you realize that, it's great. You have the best conversations about life and being human.
Yeah.
Wow. Such amazing nuggets. You don't need to have it all together. I feel like that's something someone needs to hear today. So thank you for that, Taylor.
There we go. So reminder to put it all together.
Well, I deeply resonate with the long game. It's actually interesting. I have, at my full-time job, I do marketing with nonprofits, nonprofit clients, and I actually started incorporating personal branding as like an aspect of the overall organization's marketing strategy. So I've been ghostwriting this executive director's content, and at first it was getting like 5 likes. Then it was getting 20, and then now it's getting 70, and she's like now building this reputation of credibility. And although it was a little bit like, maybe she probably felt maybe embarrassed at first, or maybe she felt as if she wasn't getting the recognition that she needed, it was a long game. And now she's getting all these partnerships, sponsorships, like huge sponsorships. One came in today, and if you put yourself out there, it does happen. There is an effect. You just have to wait for it. And the best part with LinkedIn too is if the way the algorithm works too is that your post will show up again, even if it's like a year before or a few weeks prior. I'm noticing that now they've changed it entirely. So if you do post 3 weeks ago, it might show up again in a few weeks. So don't get discouraged about that process. But Taylor, you've kind of alluded to some of the success that you've had with building up your personal brand. But I just want to see if you had any success stories or case studies where personal branding has significantly contributed to your overall growth and impact with your nonprofit.
I think I'm in it right now, actually, which is really cool. Yeah. And I don't come from a marketing background. I went to school for communications. And I laugh because, sorry, I use the word thesis. I'm like, I don't write a thesis. I did a final project. Let me be very clear and backtrack that. Maybe that's imposter syndrome coming up. Like, use the word thesis. And then here's me being like, no, it wasn't that. But I have had to kind of throw myself into many hats over the years, because to be fully transparent, we don't have a marketing team. We have a community coordinator that helps with our social media. But I'm still largely the one doing the posts. She helps with creation of the assets. I'm in every sponsorship meeting, every partnership connect. I do all the sponsorship packages. So I've had to kind of put on this marketing hat, which I do deep down love, because storytelling is at the root of, I think, what we've been able to do and find our success in. But I would say only in the past couple of years when I've really started to put our name out there and do it more so. I think I tried to always hide that it was that I had not that I had started it, but I always do a really big effort to make sure it's the entire community that's really feeling the love. So beautiful through and through, like 500 volunteers, we would not be where we are without each and every one of those women. Same with our board of directors, same with our staff. You know, we all wear many hats. We all are putting in the effort to grow this incredible kind of vision we have. But for that reason, I did feel like I held back for many years, like my own name attached to it directly, because I was like, well, I shouldn't be the one speaking at all these events. It shouldn't just be me, going to these conferences. It should be a whole team of us. But then also, like, strategy wise isn't always the smartest, because you don't have the funding or the budget or the capacity to you have a 3-minute keynote. How are you going to sell it if you've got 4 other people you want to talk? Like, you sometimes have to take the reins. And so I think I've gotten more confident in just being able to be that person that's like, yeah, I'm going to speak at 8 events this week. And I don't care if I'm repeating my story, I'm putting myself out there. I'm giving thanks and gratitude every time I talk to my team. But that doesn't mean necessarily I need all 500 women to show up and say something as well. I think there's elements where absolutely I want them to each have their own light. But how can I do that? Kind of like you said, member spotlights. How can you bring them to events and they still get to network? But right now I'm finding that, yeah, by attending conferences, I throwing my name into speaking opportunities that I never would have thought I could do before, and saying yes to those opportunities is exciting, because now I am finally, I feel like, meeting a new group of women that I've been waiting for a long time, that are sitting in those roles where they're working their way up in their company, or they're running their own successful business, and they're in a capacity now where they can partner with charities. They can connect me confidently with their community department and engagement department. And we're starting to really see those big sponsorship kind of proposals come into shape and those partnership opportunities form. But it's only now that I will confidently say, after many years, I'm seeing that connect with, like, okay, them hearing my personal story from my own lens, and me not being afraid to share that, is actually the connector to why they now want to meet the rest of the team, or why they want to be a part of the greater kind of community. So I'll keep you posted, because I wouldn't say that I feel like my biggest success story is just coming to fruition, which is really great. But that went, again, I'm going to give it back to my team, but they've all played a huge part in constantly elevating our voice. And so I would say the success story to date with proven fact is that I really relied heavily on each of those people in my circle to talk about Beautiful, to tell them about their mentorship experience, to talk to their neighbor who has a daughter who's 8 and be like, you should totally enroll your kid. And it's crazy what word of mouth marketing can do. It still, to me, stands true to be the best tool to really build something. I think social media is fantastic, but it only goes so far. You need to be face to face with people. You need to at some point cross them over from a digital engagement to a personal engagement. And I think our team has done a beautiful job of doing that.
That's awesome. It's really interesting that you've almost like created your own brand champions, rather than like, they're maybe not like the founder or the initial creator of Beautiful, but at the same time, they are almost like your sales reps, your brand champions, by telling them how their own personal story resonated with the organization. I think there's a lot of people out there who do a lot of volunteering with nonprofits, and they might hesitate to act as the face because maybe they aren't the founder. But I think that regardless if you founded it or not, if you can tie in your own personal story to the organization, you're going to be raising the voice and also putting yourself out there and reaping the benefits of doing so. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, that exactly, like you said, like the community ambassadors almost are what has elevated kind of, I think, our presence. And we have a very young team, so that benefits us, because we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're where 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds are active on. But we also know that that's where a lot of women our own age are on and engaging with content. And so I'd say now some of our biggest partnerships have come out of someone finding us on social media or hearing about us through a friend of a friend and being like, oh, my company would totally back something like this. Or the CEO is like, oh, I still need that kind of work, but like my 8-year-old self totally could have used that. And that is an interesting thing we're hearing more now is like women are still wanting these types of classes because maybe they never even had that opportunity to learn about that self-confidence or heal that inner child. And so a lot of our fundraisers now are actually focused on like providing workshops and speakers for women to talk about what it is that we're working on, what are we going through, how can we work together to like, really elevate our voice, which is great. I feel like I've got like beautiful 2.0 for women building in the background that's that's really helping build up also the next generation.
Wow, that's amazing, Taylor. And I think if I can, give BeaYOUtiful a slogan, it's community, community, community. And I absolutely love it, and I'm here for it. That brings me to my next question. What are some key strategies that you've used that individuals from our community can adopt to build their personal brand in support of a nonprofit's mission?
Absolutely. The number one thing for me, I'm going to bring it back again, but storytelling, but stick to your story. And by that, I mean, it doesn't have to be your story over and over again, because that's something that really doesn't sit right with me. And that's why I resisted really attaching myself solely for so long, because I think, yes, my story is what maybe founded the organization, but the root of my why is because at 8 years old, I would have really benefited from self-esteem and mental wellness classes. And then what I've learned is, okay, so could the other 500 volunteers that are with us. So now how do I strategize the theme of the story to now pinpoint storytelling for other women? And that's a really beautiful opportunity when you can elevate your own branding by incorporating another person's personal branding. You're just, you're amplifying everyone at that point. But I would say my number one strategy is find your story and stick to the story. Again, by stick to the story, I'm going to say stick to the theme, because I think when people come back to you every time or back to the organization and you're kind of going in multiple directions that there's not clear synergy, that is when you do start to drop off. You have people that drop off because they're maybe confused about the actual mission. They're like, oh, that was a random guest speaker they had that has like really nothing to do with what I thought they were teaching. So even, the women that we try to bring in to speak to these youth, they all have a similar story or different story, but rooted in confidence building. And basically you can take anyone's story and find those connects. But we do, I think, a good job as a team of no matter what industry you come from, what background you come from, how can we root it in like what we're here to teach, which is self-esteem. So storytelling and the why and the theme is number one. Number two is you have to be okay with being authentic and being real and being transparent. This is something else I resisted for quite a while, which was letting people know how small of a charity we were. I was holding this I don't know, embarrassment. Honestly, like I wouldn't say it was the word shame. It was more like I was just embarrassed that we were so small for what I want to be. And when I'd go into that, I remember the first couple of sponsorship meetings I went into, I was so nervous because I was like, what are they gonna think? Like I'm still self-funding half of these programs. Like I don't have an official board of directors built. Like back in the day, when we were just a small nonprofit community organization, it was really hard for me to put myself out there because I was like, what do I even have to offer? Like I know where my passion is, but when you don't have the numbers to back it or the full sponsorship list to back it, that can be really tough. But I've learned that actually being transparent and being open with my funders and my sponsors and my team is what actually can be really enticing to them. I've met so many incredible women now that are like, oh, I totally will 1000% back what you do. And I want to grow with you. So yes, you might not be at, this number yet, but how can we get you there? How can I be a part of that journey? And I think it's really incredible when you have someone that wants to champion you from the roots up. I just did a speech recently that I don't feel like we're grassroots anymore. Finally, I feel like we're wildflowers and we're really blooming. But that's because people have planted the seeds with us, and some of our funders have been with us for year over year over year, and their donations get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was always a part of their plan. They're like, just wait, just be patient. The growth will come, and we're going to see it through with you. So those would be my two kind of points of strategy: is be authentic, hold no doubt that people won't still see the value despite your size. I mean, maybe people listening run massive companies, I don't know, but there's always a bigger fish in the sea, and that's something that never leaves. So I think just embracing that is actually a huge tactic that I've learned to use to my advantage. And the right people will
That's
respond.
amazing.
Yeah.
That is so awesome, Taylor. And again, I'm just going to say community, community, community. That's
Yeah.
your slogan. So
It
that
is.
makes me,
It's
I actually wonder.
And it's not fun without community. I mean,
It
entrepreneurship,
isn't.
we all know that. Like, if you're in it, you know how lonely it can be. My goodness. Like, oh yeah, that's a whole other speech in itself. But like, why would I not hang out with 400 cool women on the weekend? Like, like,
Yeah.
why do I not
Yeah.
want to go to all these conferences and hang out with kids? And like, community is everything. Life's boring without
Mhm.
it. And it adds an extra, step into my, or spark into my step, I'm trying to say, in terms of my why every day. And it just makes things a lot more fun. So yeah, community is at the root. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Taylor, but tell us, how have you successfully cracked the code of the value of community engagement? Like someone like, let's say a director of a nonprofit is trying to, effectively engage with their community. What is the code? Because there definitely is a code, so you can't say there isn't one. So tell us, how did you crack it for effective community engagement? Tell us.
Oh, you have to show up yourself. It's like the no-brainer for me. And I am that person, and I'm lucky that maybe I'm like super extrovert and love to be social. So I'm like, I'm coming to every event. I'm hosting parties, like, we're doing a volunteer training in person because I want to, like, have fun and see everyone. But I think especially what I'm hearing trending right now is, people aren't wanting to go back to work these days in office. People are after COVID, this remote work life has really actually like dissociated employees from offices and from community building, even within a sector or an industry or a company. However you look at it, you see a lot of yeah, just disconnect happening. And I think for me, no matter what industry you're in, as an executive director or in a leadership role, a big part of like being that leader is leading by example. And so if you are showing up into the room and you're putting in the effort to host people, those people likely will show up because they're like, Haley's putting in all this effort to bring us together. Like, we should go. And then you go and you suddenly remember how fun it is to be around people and to be inspired by like-minded individuals. And so that has never wavered with our organization. We still to this day, like, have so many events that we throw even just for our mentors that unite us. And then when they mentor programs as well, that's something I should mention, or workshops, it's always in groups. So you're never mentoring alone for our programs. You always have minimum of 3, maximum of actually like 15 to 20 mentors available. And so you constantly, when you're teaching, are with other women no matter what. And I think that is also a special thing we've created, because so many of our mentors are now like best friends. Which is amazing. Like, we can be a platform where you're meeting your future, BFF or other women that you maybe typically wouldn't just casually meet when you go out for drinks or you're out for dinner. I'm in Vancouver, and so that's something I hear a lot of complaints about is we aren't the warmest city sometimes, in terms of, you go to a restaurant, the average person beside you at the bar might not say hi to you. People are kind of in their tunnel vision a bit, and not everyone. I argue Vancouver can be the opposite, because I have the most incredible community I feel here. But BeaYOUtiful has provided a foundation for that. Absolutely. Like, so many of the women I see weekly now are actually through like volunteering with the organization. So I think for that engagement level, you have to show up. You have to be willing to be like the rally and recruit people in and remind people what it's like to feel a part of something like that. Because I think we can all, like, it's easy to stay tucked away in our homes or in our work kind of mode and not expand out of that. And so I think it's good habits as a leader to constantly be inviting, whether, even if you're not hosting the event, is there a conference going on and you're inviting your team to it? Is there a hockey game happening and you want to go and have a watch party? Like, it doesn't even have to be related to the work. I think it's just the gathering that innately brings us together.
Absolutely. That's wow. So there's just so much from that conversation, and I'm just like writing notes and like letting it like marinate. So thank you so much for that, Taylor. Haley, what are you thinking? There's just so much, hey?
Yeah, well, I was sitting here thinking, and I outside of Women's Nonprofit Network, my full-time job, I'm also part of a mental health charity called Step Above Stigma, and something that I was doing 2 years ago when um, we were trying to figure out our strategic plan in terms of engaging youth and young adults in our mental health programming was the fact that Canada is in a loneliness epidemic, which is actually a fantastic opportunity for nonprofits to try to tackle because as you mentioned, Taylor, more and more people are feeling lonely, but there's a really far and few opportunities to go and engage with your community. So if you can create those spaces and, I'm actually very introverted. Like I'm someone who doesn't like to go to networking events or things like that. But if you can actually push yourself to either host or even just go, the value is just astronomical. And I think too, just from a professional lens, if this is an incentive, your net worth is your network. So I really resonate with that strongly. And I think that if there is an opportunity from like a strategic planning lens to bake in community, I think it's the perfect time to do so, just given the current climate of this loneliness that people are feeling.
Yeah, that's a great piece to put in there. And it's true. And I think everyone can relate to it in some aspect. Maybe
Yeah.
now, I coming out of COVID, it's so funny. I feel like COVID was last year and people are like, it was 3 years ago. I'm like, what? What happened to the last like few years in between? But, we're still feeling the effects. We're still feeling the impact. I also think like loneliness is something us as humans just feel throughout our entire lives. But yeah, something like a pandemic
Yeah.
will just heightened it even more. But I like that idea of like, could you find could you help with that by reaching out to other nonprofits
Yeah.
and getting involved in the community and being present, and definitely going to networking events. Oh my gosh, I'm going to one tonight. Don't know a single person. I'm a firm believer though, it gets so much easier the more you do it. It is so uncomfortable. Of course, no matter how many times, like walking into a room where you do not know a single person, absolutely. But there's always trigger things or trigger kind of comments I say that I like to make, that it's a good trigger, which is like, I'll comment on someone's energy. I'll comment on someone's like shoes. I'll stand in line at the bar and like make sure when I'm getting a drink, I'm like talking to the person who's in front of me. There's ways, right? Eye contact. But I find I'm going to more events solo now, and our team is spread out across Canada now that I don't got my right wing woman, my community kind of program manager with me all the time anymore. She's moved now to the island, so I do tackle a lot of the networking kind of events myself, but they get easier the more you put yourself in those rooms. Absolutely. And I can guarantee you'll meet one person that you'll walk away from and be like, oh, she was lovely, or she inspired me, or she changed your life. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the viewers here might be thinking that personal branding is that not just how you are actually visually portraying yourself online or on your resume, but I would say personal branding is who you are in different contexts. It's how you're networking with people. It's how you are presenting yourself in a speech. It's how you're presenting yourself online, how you're presenting yourself at your current organization. So I really think that getting confident in who you are is definitely a long game. But once you do it once, then it gets easier the second time, and then it gets easier the third time, and then so forth. So I really strongly resonate with what you just said. But I know we've been talking a lot about LinkedIn, and I know you've mentioned networking and also speaking engagements. But do you have any other specific platforms or channels you recommend for individuals to focus on when they're building their personal brand to support their nonprofit?
yeah, well, the one that you just said is in-person events. Absolutely. I've always been a lover of in-person events, and I'm really big on like, yeah, one-on-one connections. So I think just saying yes to some of these random events that maybe you've never heard of, or you don't know anyone, but go anyways, or bring a buddy with you if that, it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable, but challenge yourself to not have to talk to that person the whole time either. I've like brought in a friend before with me to a few networking events, and I'll be like so transparent of like, I also need to talk to a lot of other people in this room. And usually I bring someone who is excited by that challenge, like doesn't feel the need just to talk to me either. They want to meet people. And you can kind of push yourself that way, but know that there's that like safe zone if at any moment you want to like sneak out and leave the event, or you want to get a seat together and you have that person with you. But in-person events, absolutely. Instagram is a huge one. So I'd say that's where I have the biggest presence, and I still don't have a massive following, but I have really high engagement on Instagram, and I've got a huge community of people. I've got, from like my parents and my family and my in-laws to like young girls that I teach follow me. So what I put on there, I am very aware of and cautious of because of just the all ages that I reach. But the BeaYOUtiful account is where we largely we send all of our youth to, as well as our mentors. So we have a rule at BeaYOUtiful because of just the age that we deal with. They're minors. We're never allowed to give out our personal Instagram. If they happen to find us, which they often do, like that's on their own time, but we're never linking ourselves directly. We always say, if you want to keep in touch, the BeaYOUtiful Foundation has their own Instagram, has their TikTok, that's where you find us. But it's our responsibility on there to really be putting out positive energy and making media a tool of positivity and not being a toxic environment, because that is a very dangerous kind of line that these kids are dealing with, and women alike, and adults alike, I should say. But kids really have so much accessible to them and so much content coming their way, that if we can at least provide that spark of inspiration for them on their page, you hope that more content like that continues to then feed their kind of, or go into their feed versus other content that they can see. But yeah, Instagram, yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook ads have actually been very beneficial for us. We do a lot of, not a lot, but a decent amount of Facebook and Instagram ads. Usually they're to share content about our free programs for youth, but in doing that, you actually often get a youth counselor that sees it, or a teacher that sees it, or a parent, a woman that ends up mentoring. So we have found like a very interesting, it's just the right demographic that's seeing a Facebook ad for us, and now Instagram ads as well. But that has been a huge tool. And then, yeah, my last one would be cold emails. I'm a big fan of this. My husband actually just sent me a quote today from an email he got sent, and it was that, sending one email a week to one person you don't know but you would dream of knowing can go a long way. Because even out of three, like, you think 52 weeks in a year, even 5 say yes. Like, that's pretty incredible. If those are 5 people you would have never thought would have responded. You never know where those conversations can lead. You've planted a seed in that inbox. So I just feel, I sent one today. So I doing cold emails to people you idolize, or people you look up to, people that inspire you, companies you want to partner with. Like, what's the harm? What is the harm? If anything, you might just get lucky, and they'll be like, yeah, actually, we're looking for a new charity partner, or I do want to come and guest speak. And then that's an amazing source for you to lean into. So that's a personal favorite, but I know that's not for everyone.
Thank you so much, Taylor. We're nearing the end of this webinar, but I don't even want it to end because you've been dropping so much gems. I'm like, can we just stay on for like 2 more hours? But no, we can't. Taylor, what advice do you have for individuals who are just starting to explore personal branding to support their nonprofit mission?
Go all in. That'd be my number one slogan for it. Is it, anything you're starting, I hope that you really love it, and you have to, because it's not an easy, whether it's a not-for-profit or a for-profit, any company that you're kind of venturing into, it's such an ongoing roller coaster. And I've been doing this 11 years now, and yes, I'm so darn proud of like where we are, and I think we truly are just on the rise of where we have potential to go. But it's been a labor of love, and it's had a lot of moments where I've doubted my abilities and myself. But if you love it enough, that'll kind of fuel you forward. So that would be my biggest advice, is go all in with your heart, but be prepared to be like pushed down a lot too. But that's okay. You're only going to learn through your failures. You don't learn very much through success. And yeah, at the dinner table now, I often actually ask whoever I'm sitting with, like, what's one thing you failed at today? And we celebrate that, because that means you've learned something. It means you've acknowledged that there's something you want to try to do better, or engage with. So yeah.
That is such a different way of looking at failures. Usually, like, we, run away from failures and shy away from them, never talk about it again. It's taboo. But for you to face your failures and say, what did you fail at today? That is so commendable. Thank you so much for your time, Taylor.
Oh, thank you. I feel so fueled by this, and yeah, it's amazing, and I look forward to continuing watching more of these other webinars with other incredible women you bring on, and yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Well, before we wrap it up, I always like to do a quick summary of what we talked about because there are so many golden nuggets throughout this conversation.
Oh gosh, please do, because I'm like, what did I just spit out right now? Like, let me know. Maybe I'll learn
my
some
gosh.
new words.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Taylor, you've spoken this a lot, but authenticity is obviously very key in building your personal brand. I think we sometimes resist showing who we truly are, which, obviously is all encompassing of our successes, failures, triumphs, all the things. But I think it's really important to share your story, to share your successes, to share your failures, and obviously connect that personal story to your nonprofit, regardless if you're the founder or not. Share who you are and how you do it and what you do with confidence. Share it in the speaking opportunities, share it at your networking events, online. And at the end of the day, the naysayers don't matter. Start small and go from there. And then obviously Sylvia mentioned this: community. Lean on your community and to champion and represent your organization and give them the platforms to do so. Obviously, that was a big summary, and I think so many people are going to have follow-up questions today, Taylor, after listening to you speak. So I was just wondering, where can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, so as mentioned, we're the BeaYOUtiful Foundation. We do spell that a little bit differently, so I always say that. Beautiful is spelled BeaYOUtiful. So literally replace the letter U with the word you. But yeah, thebeautifulfoundation.com. And then my direct email is taylor@thebeautifulfoundation.com. Taylor Lynn Huey is my full name. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever. Obviously I love networking. So I'm happy to, whether it's answer questions or literally just connect for no specific reason. I'm all about that. So I'm grateful, and I can't wait to see, the connections that come from this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Again, this was such an incredible discussion. Sylvia and I are going to be linking a bunch of really amazing resources in the show notes, so you can check out to help build your own personal brand. And we will see you next time.
Thanks.
This was great.